Bit of a change of pace now, because one of my favourite reveals from today's briefing was the new game Beyond Eyes. Absolutely beautiful, and we're very lucky because we've got a behind-the-scenes look at this beautiful indie title from developer Sharida Halato. Check it out.
When somebody told me that there was a possibility of going to E3, I just went like... So in Beyond Eyes, you meet a 10-year-old girl named Ray. And when she was younger, she got into an accident. And as a result, she's been blind. She was severely traumatized to an extent that she doesn't feel comfortable leaving her home. She's afraid of loud noises. She's afraid of unpleasant objects. And she's kind of sheltered. So she lives in a really nice closed-off garden where everything is nice and there's birds and there's flowers and everything's pleasant. But at the same time, it's quite lonely. And then at some point, she meets this really gorgeous fat red cat called Nani, and they become friends and they play together and they do like little hide-and-seek games in the garden, and she's actually feeling a lot better. At some point, Nani is trying to kind of urge her to go outside with him to play. She doesn't. She feels she's too scared to do this. But then the cat disappears, and this is kind of her call to adventure, where she goes out for the first time to confront those fears in search for a friend. And then you kind of go on this journey where you encounter new people, new things, and hopefully find a kitty. I wanted to show the world through kind of the way her senses stopped developing at the moment she became blind, her visual sense. So the things she remembers are kind of the way a small child perceives the world. So something that is frightening is monstrous. And something that's, pretty and exciting is very vibrant and slightly oversized. I wanted to tell the players a story about overcoming that sort of bad things happening in life. And, things happen, and sometimes it's pretty tough. And I wanted the player to kind of experience with Ray what it would be to face those fears and to kind of overcome them. The style of Beyond Eyes is kind of very storybook-like. So I wanted to have that idealistic version of the world where everything is nicely shaped and there's no really hard edges and like different soft color variations. I decided to team up with a friend of mine, Rian. She's a very talented watercolor artist. So a lot of her little sketches are made with watercolors and pens, and they look really lovely. And I looked at them, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we actually could get those sort of graphics in games, as opposed to more like stylized, cartoony or very realistic ones. And we started talking about ideas about getting that flowy, that brightness, that vivid, moving aspect of watercolor paint into a game. And that was basically the seed of that art style. It's kind of a far stretch, right? It's a very visual, pretty game about somebody who can't see a thing. So I went through we did different things. So I talked to people who actually were blind, to organizations that help people with blindness. And it was never my initial idea to make a realistic representation, but at the same time I did want to do the feeling justice. So at E3 we'll be showing a different part of the game that people haven't seen before, and it's basically where she will encounter what it's like to be outside in the rain for the first time. This means that all her senses that she previously relied on to visualize the world become very distorted. So the wind, the sound of the rain, it blocks out her hearing, and the sense of smell disappears or changes a little bit. And then of course everything is wet, so it doesn't have that original texture to it. And as a result, it becomes very frightening for her because the world is constantly changing around her, and she has no sense of direction or perspective whatsoever. I feel very lucky. A few years back, the games that I make would not have been possible, but there have been some examples over the past few years that kind of changed the landscape of games, making them more diverse, making people no longer focused on is this a game or does this belong in games, but more open for the idea that, okay, we can have different kinds of protagonists, we can have different kinds of art styles, we can have different types of players as well. It's really nice to see all that struggle from a lot of other people kind of pave the way for me, so I kind of feel like I'm just marching in. It's like, okay. It's been quite a long process for a lot of people, and it's really nice to see that that we have more room for diversity and creativity.
So there's Beyond Eyes, just one of hundreds and hundreds of really amazing stories that you see on Idea Xbox.